All right, YouTube, it's an auspicious day. Ghost politics has returned. Some of you, probably most of you, don't actually know who Ghost is. Blog talk radio star of sorts, underground famous. But then again, all the people that I listen to, and probably most of the people you listen to, they're underground fans. They're not like, fucking Justin Bieber or Barack Obama, certainly, or something like that. Ghost Politics bills himself as a true capitalist radio. He had been making shows on Blogtalk for a very long time. He then ended up quitting. And his reason is he explained, and there's a link in the description to his Blog Talk radio page. The reason was a combination of feeling unsafe. He mentions, of course, the NSA, because it's quite clear that there has been targeting of not even necessarily right-wing. We see what's happening with the RNC, but individuals that support actual capitalism, certainly libertarianism, paleo-conservatives, the alt-right. There has been an attempt by the Obama left corporatists to quash those groups out. By the way, why do you think they also went after progressive groups? It couldn't be any fucking plainer exactly why the Hillarys, Obamas, Romneys, and so forth are teaming up to attack both the sort of the socialist and progressive left, and on the right wing, most of the groups that aren't like corporate neocons, which is another way of saying they don't really care about capitalism. They don't even really care about traditionalism. I mean, they'll tip their hat to the evangelicals. At the end of the day, the only religious group they care about is AIPAC or something like that, and I think that goes for the Democrats also. But in his emergency broadcast message, which was yesterday, he called upon the capitalist army to rise up, support Donald Trump, and conduct digital warfare of a sort against sort of the enemies of capitalism. Now, first, let me preface this with a disclaimer saying I'm not going to encourage people to do anything that's unlawful. And that depends really on somebody who's a capitalist or a libertarian in the UK or Brazil or Mexico or something. You're not necessarily under the same laws as the United States. I don't know enough about any of these foreign nations, except if you go into Western Europe, especially Scandinavia or Germany, you can get thrown in jail basically for anything. You can say that a politician doesn't know what they're talking about, and if that politician happens to be, I guess, a communist or something, you get dragged off to the gulag for re-education. That seems to be the way it works in parts of Europe now. Then again, if you go to Eastern Europe, you get thrown in jail for being gay. So, it's sort of the tale of two extremes at this point. I am a true capitalist. I'm not a true capitalist in the sense of the real conservative movement of the past, or the paleocons, sort of the Ron Pauls. I'm a true capitalist in the libertarian sense. And I myself don't intend to support Donald Trump in the general election. I intend to vote with my conscience and support Gary Johnson because I feel he's the best choice. But, and I will preface this with this, and this is why I support, in general, the Spirit of Ghosts message. Right now, fundamentally, there's an opportunity for the several million people, roughly, that voted for the Libertarian Party the last time around. That number's probably 2 or 3 times what it was now. The registration rate is rising at such an astronomical pace that I would be surprised if in a couple of cycles the Libertarian Party wasn't approaching a double-digit vote share, which is what it needs to be on the ballot everywhere, start raising money, start cracking through and getting to the debates and so forth. I believe that most Americans are libertarian and simply don't realize that they are. And there's reason to believe that a large proportion now of Republicans and Democrats at least self-identify partially with the libertarian movement. They simply don't realize there's a libertarian party to cater to them. There is an opportunity, though, for those several million of us that have grown tired of the two-party system to affect the outcome of the election. Voting for the Libertarian Party on a Republican or Democratic ballot in your local primary doesn't count. They're not actually registered with the party. It would be like voting for Bernie Sanders on a GOP ballot that you get at your primary, or getting a Democratic ballot and voting for Ted Cruz. It doesn't actually really mean anything. There's an opportunity right now for the libertarians, the paleo-conservatives, and certainly the alt-right, even if they happen to have their own third party or independent candidates that they prefer. There's the ability for those groups, especially within open primary states and semi-closed primary states in certain caucuses, to affect the outcome of the primary system in order to get a better election going. I believe that the best possible candidate that could be the GOP nominee would be Trump, and I say that because of this. Trump is not a paleocon or a libertarian. He's not really alt-right either. He's sort of alt-right light, nativist light. Ultimately, he's more of a Reagan conservative, or even a real conservative from many decades ago, as opposed to the neoconservatives of today. He may also crush the GOP underfoot, which would force either a real conservative movement to rise up, which would be much more tolerable than the neocons, or a schism that leads to a fracturing. The Libertarian Party could grow as it absorbs libertarian-leaning Republicans. That would be good for the Libertarian Party. I mean, probably 10 million people would join the LP. The Democrats, at the same time, keep in mind this. Hillary Clinton is going to win the nomination of the Democratic Party. Sanders doesn't have a chance. There's a good chance he'll run as an independent. Even if he doesn't, though, a lot of Democrats who are further left, further towards libertarian than Hillary Clinton on the drug war, on foreign engagement, foreign theaters of war, and so forth, might be tempted to join the Libertarian Party. Ultimately, it is good for the libertarian movement, and this is why I support this strategy. If real capitalism takes back hold of the GOP, right now the GOP is fiscally interventionist and morally authoritarian. It doesn't have any redeeming qualities. Just as the Hillary Clintons, they're fiscally interventionist and they're morally authoritarian. On either side, it doesn't matter whether you want to ban hate speech on the so-called left or ban sodomy or whatever on the right. It's the same general principle behind the two. It's just a bunch of politicians that feed into the stupidity of certain segments of the voting population to get votes, to get money, to get power. Ultimately pass a bunch of bullshit moral laws to justify their own existence. They play off to the afraid. They play off to those that fear things. They play off to the pearl clutchers. Trump, though, really, I hate to say this, for all of the bigotry that people perceive in him, hasn't really done this. He's spoken of illegal immigrants. He never said he was opposed to immigration. He spoke of Islamofascism and a stay on Islamic immigrants until the border problem is fixed. And while I don't support mass deportation, I don't have any reason to believe he would actually do that. Ultimately, I think he will build the border wall. And regardless of what legal immigration policy you implement, as a libertarian, I want to see legal immigration be streamlined, do away with the quotas, make it easier so that you have a much better legal immigration system. You don't have to fucking deal with illegal immigration. We should put pressure on the Mexicans to secure their border too, because most of these people are Central Americans. They walk across the Mexican border, the southern border that is. They get on a train, a death train, half of them die on the way there, by the way, and then the emaciated, diseased individuals that arrive at Mexico's northern border make a run for it, right across the border, and ICE basically does nothing. It would make more sense to secure our border, insist that our southern partner do the same, and at least make an attempt to have some level of national sovereignty, even if your legal immigration system becomes streamlined, thus cheaper, also I will say, and admits 10 times more people. And you're still ending up with less people in the country. You've just made sure that everyone's getting a background check instead of simply walking across and being in this weird legal gray area so that it becomes a constant campaign issue. Libertarians, paleo-conservatives, the alt-right, the older wave, capitalist conservatives and so forth, even I would say in a way the evangelicals and groups like that. Yes, I would call upon you to do exactly what Ghost called upon you to do with the first part of his statement, which is support Trump and meme it up, so forth. The reason I say that is it will destroy the Democratic Party. They'll be laid waste to in the general election. So that takes care. I said early on, no more Bushes, no more Clintons. Well, Jeb's out. He's not going to do fucking anything for the rest of his career. The Bush family has been crushed. Ted Cruz, by the way, is in bed with the Bushes. I want to see him defeated as well. I don't want any Bushes sliding into a cabinet position because lying Ted happens to become the Republican nominee. On the other side, we need to crush Hillary Clinton. The only way that that can be done is to get Donald Trump in as the nominee. Ted Cruz will wage a symmetrical campaign. He will lose. We all know that he will lose. He has enough fucking baggage so that he can't even differentiate himself from fucking Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders is doomed, so she will be the nominee. I say this with virtual 100% certainty. Kasich can't even be considered on the second ballot at the convention. It's between Trump and Ted Cruz. They're the only two people who have won enough states to be considered on the second ballot. On the second ballot, all those people that voted for Rubio and Kasich end up having to cast their votes for Trump or Cruz. It's almost unthinkable because of the math involved that neither of them would be pushed over the threshold and thus get the nomination. I would much rather it be Donald Trump. He's more sane than Ted Cruz. He's not an Evangelo-con. He's not a Zionazi. He's not, completely controlled by AIPAC. He's standing, look at it. AIPAC meetings coming up. Trump's still talking about a two-state solution. It's pissing all of the Zionists in this country off. That's a good thing. Our elections shouldn't be beholden to some fucking foreign power. Ultimately, what I would like to see is that we can lay the groundwork for a future libertarian takeover of the political system so that the Libertarian Party can be on the ballots, be in the debates, say what it wants to say to a group of people that is not reliant upon a handful of Facebook groups and Twitter accounts. Grow more quickly. It will eventually, because it is morally, fiscally, and socially superior in virtually every possible way to the corporate left and corporate right. It will become the major party in the United States. Our economy will skyrocket. We won't be involved in a bunch of fucking retarded wars like both the Republicans and Democrats within the establishment want us to be involved in. The way to lay the groundwork is to inject real capitalism back into the system through Donald Trump, who will win the election if he's nominated. And by virtue of that, because people will see, hey, repealing this program and not bombing that country and doing all these things works, we should keep doing that. The Libertarian Party then merely needs to do one thing, and that's say, hey, these were all our ideas. Everything that's working that Trump is doing, we championed sometimes in the 70s or 80s. Now, I don't know if Ghost has any specific love for the libertarian movement. He seems to be relatively on board with Trump. But if a person supports real, unadulterated free market capitalism, which we haven't fully enjoyed for a very long time, we had partial free market capitalism until roughly the era of Clinton. We had almost full free market capitalism until the Gilded Age. And the less capitalism that we have, the less entrepreneurship, the less real pull yourself up by your bootstraps stuff that we have available to us, the more stagnant the economy becomes. The last thing I would say is this. The corporate left and the corporate right, that is the Mitt Romneys and Hillary Clintons, while they may belong to different parties, they both believe in globalism. That means whatever is best for their donors' bottom line, they will do. It is never going to be best for their donors' bottom lines if they engage in any form of nationalism within the United States, which involves ultimately free market capitalism and putting government back in its place where it belongs, actually using the Constitution and not considering it just a list of suggestions. They would rather jobs go overseas so that things can be re-imported for much lower costs, so that they can run the markets, they can increase growth artificially, they can increase markets artificially. They don't care how many Americans lose their jobs or are getting paid less, because ultimately they've invested that money somewhere else. Well, to them it doesn't matter. They're multinational. They don't have any specific loyalty to the United States. The only country in the world that they have significant loyalty to is the state of Israel. The only reason that they do that, it's not even because of Judaism or muck conspiracy theories so much as it is they happen to have a nuclear program. They happen to be in a very good location to bomb other countries from. I don't know why they don't just adopt Turkey. It's in, basically the same region. But whatever. I guess it's more easy to control this monocultured little strip of desert than it is a country that also controls the Bosphorus and thus a great deal of trade, or Egypt with the Suez Canal. So yes, I would call upon my subscribers, all over 23,000 of you at this point. You should engage in listening to Ghost Politics. I mean, if nothing else, it is entertaining. Even if you consider him unhinged, some of you probably will. He swears a lot and knocks cans over and makes all sorts of weird noise, drinks beer during his broadcasts. It's entertaining, so thus worth listening to. At the same time, you might learn something. Go back through his archives. He suggests you go back through his archives and realize that the things he was saying would happen have happened. I haven't done that yet, but ultimately, I'm going to assume that what he predicted was about what is happening now with the modern social justice warrior movement. Now, to Ghost, should he see this, you weren't the only one who figured that was going to happen. You probably were the one most public about it, but at the same time, unfortunately, yes, you were right. The Obama era has given way to basically a repeat of, you could consider it the early interwar period with Dadaism. And, the postmodern period that we're in right now, I'll say this as an aside, is just about the same as sort of the 1910s, 1920s period, when art began to represent nothing, when people were engaging in street fights over should we be communists or Nazis or whatever, for the first, or nationalists, Volkish movements sprang up. You see a lot of the same things really happening. Unfortunately, it could give us the same general end result, which is the rise of extremely fringe movements. You see this with like Black Lives Matter and the social justice warriors. They want to claim that it's somehow their freedom to infringe upon others' freedom. They are BLM and the SJWs that show up at these completely lawful, well-organized political rallies are, in essence, almost a little bit like the brown shirts or the Red Guard. It doesn't really matter which one you liken them to, communists, Nazis, whatever you want to say. They're basically the same. They're attempting to suppress others' views. They've been doing it for years. They've been browbeating people now for almost half a decade with their constant haranguing about hate speech. Well, your opinion doesn't matter because you're white, but race doesn't mean anything sort of stuff. They've been doing this for quite some time. So yeah, I would suggest that you listen to his broadcast. Go back through the archives, listen at least to the emergency message he gives out, and you can decide for yourself. As for myself, I did vote for Trump in the Vermont primary. Not because I'm on board the Trump train so much as he is the best GOP candidate. He's better than the Democratic candidates. And, I don't even know how the fuck I'm supposed to cast a ballot in the Libertarian primary. For all I know, it's like online voting or something, and they don't even do that. I know you can get a registry form going, but it's not quite yet the time for the rise of the Libertarian Party. It's getting there, it's growing, it's coming to a boil. But we have to rack the political system first. We have to restore capitalism, the fundamental foundational basis of libertarianism insofar as fiscal policy goes. We have to approach it as closely as possible. You can only begin repealing those moral laws when people feel more safe and they don't feel the need to constantly be afraid. They will never consent to doing away with the drug war, stopping foreign interventionism and so forth when they're under severe economic stress. That would be my message to my fellow libertarians. You're not going to get, as long as people are afraid, because the government has fucked up the economic system so badly, people are relying upon government handouts just to survive. Until you fix that fundamental central problem, your social views are never going to be significantly adopted. Look, people think Bernie Sanders is some sort of revolutionary for saying, yeah, we should legalize marijuana. That's one drug out of many drugs. He's not even talking about ending the drug war, and people consider him some sort of fucking Stalin revolutionary. It's just one goddamn substance. He's not talking about, well, psilocybin's not too bad for you. Mescaline's ultimately not that bad for you. We should legalize those too. He's just talking about the federal government should scale back the drug war by like 1%. And people have declared him sort of the friend of every stoner in this country or something like that. It's laughable to see. You're still going to get thrown in jail if you're a heroin addict or something like that, because the prison complex is still going to fucking donate to him should he win, which there's like a 1/1,000,000th of 1% chance he will. So yeah, for anyone who's a libertarian, wants to see the Libertarian Party grow, adopting Trump's essentially fusion model, which is a lot closer to economic capitalism than what we've fucking got now. What we've got now is very little removed from Chinese-style mixed economic system. We're very close to being like China economically right now. This is also the root of our problem. Look at what happened. Look at what's happening to fucking China right now. It's happened to us over and over again. People say this was the problem of the free market. That was the problem of the free market. The free market destroyed this segment of the economy. No, government interventionism did that. The government comes in, guarantees a business. Well, that business is no longer experiencing competition. Its competitors suffer, and all the people working for its competitors suffer because that one business happens to have gotten some very lucrative bureaucratic no-bid contract from Uncle Sam. That is not capitalism. It's not even corporatism. That's just government intervening within the market. Well, once the market is no longer free, it's no longer a free market. It's not that difficult to understand. It doesn't take a genius or a rocket scientist to comprehend the fact that if a business cannot stand on its own merit and the government comes in and starts giving them free money, giving them a bunch of contracts, which often are about the most loose and negotiable things that you could possibly have for the business, not for the government. The government will give them whatever the fuck they want. Government, you got some senator, security council or whatever, has ties to some arms dealer, and says, well, we should use this company because they gave me $1 million, so we're going to use this company to get, this type of tank part made or something. Doesn't matter if that business charges 100 times what those parts are actually worth. And so all the other competitive businesses, they suffer. That's a way to fuck your own economy up. But people haven't realized it. They think that it's some evil corporatist fat cat up there. That corporatist fat cat up there only became a corporatist fat cat either because of his own sheer determination in the face of the U.S. government or because the U.S. government was giving them free money, essentially. So we don't have free market capitalism. We haven't for a long time. We've had a fusion model before, which is what Trump's suggesting. Well, back then, the government had no problem with people in the early atomic era, learning all about shortwave broadcasts and ameliorating radiation and wear gas masks and even take your guns to school. People used to do that back in the 50s and 60s. Nobody had a problem with it. That's the sort of society that we need to return to. We need to realize the people are penultimate, not the federal government, not the states, not the municipalities, not the whims of some idiot donor, but the people at large. And when I say people at large, I'm talking about the non-aggression principle. I'm talking about people don't impose upon one another. And yes, even the far leftists are right on one thing. Abuse from a corporation or something like that is just as bad as abuse from the government. It's also just as unconstitutional. Your right to free speech doesn't magically go away because some business wants to strip it from you because you happen to work for them or something. That's just as retarded as suggesting that the government has the right to indoctrinate everyone and tell them what they can and cannot think and say. It's exactly the same. You know what? Those corporations that do that, they're all guaranteed by the government. They get all sorts of grants and kickbacks. So that's what I would suggest. So there are links in the description to his Twitter got taken down, I guess, but to his Blogtalk radio page. And that's about all. Peace out.